Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
A strip of orange sunlight bled across the skyline as Daniel navigated the early rush-hour traffic. The city felt half-awake cars crawling along, coffee in every other driver's hand, and horns honking like an agitated chorus. Despite the congestion, he tapped the steering wheel in anticipation, thinking about his son's upcoming graduation. The past few nights he could barely sleep, excitement wrestling with nerves. His phone buzzed on the dashboard. The screen flashed. Adrian, son. A bright grin broke across Daniel's face. He's probably calling about tomorrow, he thought, relief flooding him. He turned down the radio and took a quick glance at his watch. 7:12 a.m. Daniel thumbed the answer button, putting the call on speaker. "Hey, Adrian, Dad," Adrian's voice came through, a little shaky. I'm not sure how to say this." Daniel sensed something was off. The traffic light turned yellow, but he barely noticed, flipping on the turn signal. "What's wrong?" he asked, trying to keep his tone calm. Adrian's response was muffled, like he'd covered the phone. Daniel caught fragments. "No, Mom, wait." Then, abruptly, the line rustled. A second later, Helen, his wife, cut in. Her voice was sharp, carrying an undercurrent of tension. "Daniel, listen! You shouldn't come to the ceremony." Daniel's grip on the steering wheel tightened. What do you mean? Shouldn't come?" He thought maybe she was joking, or something had changed with seating arrangements. But the seriousness in Helen's voice sparked a chill in his chest. "It's only for close family," she said bluntly. "Your presence would make things complicated." The words hit him like a slap. The light turned green, but Daniel's foot jammed the brake instead of the gas. A symphony of car horns erupted behind him. "For close family?" he repeated, throat dry. "Helen, I am family." She sighed in frustration. "Daniel, it's better if you're not there. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." There was a protest from Adrian in the background. Something like, "Mom, don't." But then a click. The call ended. Daniel sat there stunned, the traffic behind him raging. A few drivers swerved around, shouting curses through open windows. Mechanically, he guided his sedan onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. He rested his forehead on the steering wheel, heart pounding. "Close family only," he echoed in his head. It felt like the road beneath him had crumbled. He had always pictured standing by Adrian's side, cheering when his name was announced. Wasn't that a father's privilege? Slowly, he raised his head. Cars whizzed by in a blur, the city unaware of the personal earthquake ripping through him. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He recalled every late tuition bill he'd paid, every early morning practice he'd driven Adrian to, every night he'd sat up, checking if the boy was home safe. And now Helen's voice, cool, dismissive, echoed, "It's only for close family." He exhaled hard, eyes burning. He refused to break down in a parked car by the roadside. Nudging the gear shift into drive, he merged back into traffic. Anger flared, but so did heartbreak. They'd been married for decades, and he'd considered them a team, despite the recent distance. He thought tomorrow would be a new start, a proud day for all three of them. Flicking on the radio again to drown out his whirling thoughts, he navigated toward the next exit. Scenes flashed in his mind. Adrian's first t-ball game. That time Daniel taught him to parallel park, every milestone that should have led to this big day. "But apparently I'm not part of it," he whispered bitterly. A wave of confusion settled in. Why would Helen do this? Sure, they'd had disagreements, but to bar him from Adrian's graduation, this was different. A door slamming in his face and not even an explanation. He tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. He left none. What was there to say? Helen had made her point. With a trembling breath, Daniel pulled off the highway and steered into the parking lot of a nondescript diner, the neon, open 24/7 sign flickering overhead. He killed the engine and sat still for a moment. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted through the cracked window, but his appetite had vanished. Staring out at the rising sun, Daniel felt cold dread swirl inside. It was more than a phone call. That single conversation signaled a deep, irreparable crack. He pressed his temples as if trying to keep his thoughts from spiraling further. "If I'm not family," he murmured, "then what am I?" The question lingered, unanswered, in the hush of the early morning. Daniel returned home that evening with a knot in his stomach. The suburban cul-de-sac was bathed in a dusky hue, porch lights flickering on one by one. The place looked so ordinary, so calm. Anyone passing by would assume this was a typical household enjoying a pre-celebration dinner for a graduate. Inside, the living room lamps glowed softly, illuminating a scene that felt both familiar and foreign. Helen sat at the dining table, her smartphone face down. Across from her, Adrian busied himself with a laptop, headphones around his neck. In the corner, Monica, Helen's sister, spoke in hushed tones on her own phone, occasionally glancing over. The tension was palpable. Daniel set his keys on the kitchen counter, summoning every ounce of composure he had left. Helen barely looked up, but Adrian offered a cautious nod. "Hey, Dad," he murmured. Daniel's gaze flicked between them, searching for a shred of normalcy. "So," he began, trying to keep his voice steady, "about that call this morning? Are we really going to pretend it didn't happen?" Monica ended her call abruptly, pockets her phone, and tries a polite smile. "I'm going to check on something upstairs." She left in a hurry, like she couldn't stand the thickening air. Helen exhaled, placing her hands flat on the table. "Daniel, please, let's not make this difficult." Her tone was so matter-of-fact, it reignited the anger that had been simmering all day. "You told me not to come to my own son's graduation," Daniel said, voice taut. "I think that's already as difficult as it gets." Adrian closed the laptop, refusing to meet Daniel's eyes. "Dad, it's not personal," he said quietly. Mom and Aunt Monica wanted a smaller arrangement. It's going to be a busy day, you know." Daniel stared at Adrian, incredulous. Busy day? Isn't that exactly why the father should be there, celebrating? The boy's excuses sounded rehearsed, but also uncertain. Helen raked a hand through her hair, her frustration peeking through. "Daniel, the ceremony is short. Seats are limited. We only have passes for—" "Don't lie to me," Daniel cut in, his voice trembling. "I've seen those events. Everyone brings parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, even half the neighborhood sometimes." Helen rose from her chair, crossing her arms. "I need everything to go smoothly tomorrow. Adrian's future depends on the impressions we make. There are potential networking opportunities with my sister's contacts. If you show up unannounced, it could complicate things." Daniel felt like she'd just knocked the wind out of him. "So I'm the face of chaos?" Helen's eyes flashed. "I never said that. You're twisting my words." In the corner, Adrian sank deeper into his seat, looking mortified. His mouth opened, but no words came. A heavy silence descended. Daniel could almost hear the hum of the fridge, the faint ticking of the wall clock, each second an insult to the family's crumbling unity. Finally, he forced himself to step back. "All right," he said, voice thick with sorrow. "You want it to be just you, Adrian, and Monica? Fine." He turned, heading for the stairs. Adrian half rose, but Helen placed a hand on his shoulder. She didn't chase after Daniel. Neither did Adrian. Daniel's footsteps echoed down the hallway, and as he entered his bedroom, he felt his heartbeat thunder in his ears. The father who'd once been the center of every milestone in Adrian's life was now being shoved aside like some inconvenient afterthought. Closing the door, he leaned against it, a storm raging inside him. They don't want me. They don't need me. The thought was bitter, and yet it fueled something fierce, burning with heartbreak and a growing sense of betrayal. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he replayed the short, clipped conversation from the morning, or the tense standoff downstairs. The house was too quiet. The hush of suburbia twisted into a haunting melody. He got up around midnight, slipping into sweatpants and a worn shirt. The hallway light was still on, a pale glow outlining every door. He passed by Adrian's room, locked, silent. Helen was likely in the guest room with Monica, whispering about final arrangements for the big day. The big day without me, he reminded himself grimly. He drifted into the study, a small room lined with old books and a desk he'd once used for late-night work. On that desk, he noticed a manila envelope. The top was partly open, revealing official paperwork. Daniel approached, his curiosity piqued. It was Adrian's invitation packet for the graduation ceremony, complete with instructions and a formal request for the family representatives who would join him on stage during a post-ceremony photo. Daniel gently slid the forms out. The pages listed 2 names: Helen Sutton, mother, and Monica Hayes, aunt. Daniel stood there, heart sinking further. He wasn't even on the list. There was no mention of a father figure at all. He set the papers down, feeling a jolt of anger. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate exclusion. Memories rushed in. Teaching Adrian to ride a bike at age 5, running behind him until the training wheels seemed unnecessary, fighting with the insurance company to get Adrian's hospital bills covered after a nasty sports injury in high school. Nights spent double-checking college scholarship details, living expenses, and sending Adrian weekly texts about balancing classes. And for what? To be literally written out of a day he had every right to attend? A noise startled him footsteps. He spun around. Standing in the doorway was Monica, arms folded. She wore a silk robe, hair disheveled from an attempted nap. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked cautiously. "Obviously not," Daniel muttered, motioning to the packet. "You knew about this? My name's nowhere in these forms." Monica sighed, stepping into the study. "Look, Daniel, it's complicated. Helen's been under a lot of stress. She thinks you might overshadow the event or bring up old disagreements." "Old disagreements?" He let out a humorless laugh. "I'm not some ticking bomb. I'm his father. I have every right to be there." Monica fidgeted with the tie on her robe. Adrian didn't want any conflict, especially with all the guests. "He's worried you two might clash in public." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not a monster, Monica." She took a step closer, lowering her voice as though confiding a secret. "Nobody's calling you that. But Helen believes it's best for Adrian's future if you keep a low profile right now. She has some connections she's trying to impress at the ceremony." "Connections? Future?" He repeated the words with a bitter taste. Wasn't I the one helping secure that future every step of the way? Monica's phone buzzed in her robe pocket. She glanced at the screen, then back at Daniel. "Look, it's late. Maybe we can talk this through after the ceremony." His gaze turned steely. "Right. After you all do your perfect little photo op." Monica opened her mouth, but Daniel brushed past her, heading out of the study. He felt stifled, like the walls were caving in. He retreated to his bedroom and locked the door, mind spinning. A notion he'd been toying with since earlier in the day took firmer shape. If they don't want me around, maybe I should just leave. It felt irrational, but also strangely liberating. The sense of betrayal cut so deep, he wondered if he even recognized his own family anymore. Perhaps vanishing would deliver the message no conversation could. He stared at the dark ceiling, remembering a time when Helen used to say, "This house is ours forever." Then, 2 years ago, she'd thrown a casual remark in a fight. "This is my place. I decide what happens here." Those words had stung, but tonight they rang with a painful clarity. The morning air smelled of fresh dew when Daniel woke up, if he'd even slept at all. Pale light filtered through the curtains, hinting at the big day to come. Adrian's graduation. For a moment, Daniel just sat on the edge of his bed, numb to everything. Down the hall he could hear muffled voices. Helen's hushed instructions to Monica, the clang of a pot in the kitchen. Adrian was probably still sleeping or too stressed to talk. Daniel stood, exhaling slowly. His reflection in the mirror revealed dark circles under his eyes. He rummaged in the closet and found a small suitcase, one they rarely used except for weekend getaways. Opening it, he carefully placed a few shirts, jeans, socks, just enough for an extended trip. His heart pounded, but there was a steely resolve in every motion. He checked his phone, searching for a flight, any flight out, as soon as possible. A travel site popped up with tickets to Santorini. He'd heard people rave about its beaches and calm waves. Something about that distant, sun-drenched island beckoned him now, promising a refuge from heartbreak. He swiped his credit card details, almost surprised at how quickly the purchase was confirmed. A one-way ticket. Flight departing in a few hours. The finality of it all made his hands tremble, but he pressed his lips into a thin line, steeling himself for the next step. He tiptoed out of the bedroom, suitcase in tow. The hallway was quiet. Helen and Monica must be downstairs. Daniel paused by Adrian's door. Hesitating a moment, he raised his hand to knock, but some instinct stopped him. If Adrian truly wanted to talk, he would have done it last night. Daniel's chest tightened, sadness mixing with a kind of resignation. Stepping lightly down the stairs, he glimpsed Helen and Monica in the kitchen. They were discussing the day's schedule in hushed but animated tones. The ceremony, a small brunch after, meeting up with some important contacts. No one noticed Daniel as he crept through the living room. His gaze flicked across family photos on the mantel. Adrian's baby picture, last Christmas, a random 4th of July barbecue, each frame a reminder of a time he thought they were all united. Something in him wanted to smash them, to make a scene, to ask why. But he kept walking toward the front door. Just then, the husky bark of the neighbor's dog startled him. He paused, glancing through the window. The dog, Milo, trotted across the yard, trailing behind his owner, an older man named Frank, who occasionally borrowed Daniel's hedge trimmer. Frank waved, oblivious to the drama inside. Daniel managed a stiff wave back and turned the knob, stepping onto the porch. The sky glowed pink, the sun barely above the horizon. He could hear Monica's laugh behind him, something about photos with Adrian. He closed the door carefully, leaving it unlocked the way Helen usually preferred in the morning. Outside, a cool breeze brushed his face. He walked to his car, loaded the suitcase, and slid into the driver's seat. For a long moment, he gripped the steering wheel, heart hammering. "This is insane," he muttered. But another voice in his mind whispered, "Stay. They'll keep treating you like an outsider." Turning the ignition, he backed out of the driveway. He took one last look at the house light rays in the kitchen window, shadows flickering behind the curtains. That was the home he'd built, the family he'd cherished. And yet, at this moment, it no longer felt like his place. As he guided the car down the quiet street, a strange mixture of sorrow and determination welled up inside him. The day that was supposed to be a celebration of father and son had turned into a harsh reminder of how easily one could be pushed aside. He didn't know what lay ahead in Santorini. He just knew he couldn't stay here, watching from the sidelines as people he loved decided he wasn't truly part of them anymore. Dawn broke in full force, painting the sky with oranges and golds. Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel, letting the morning light guide him away, uncertain but resolute. The plane touched down with a slight jolt, its wheels screeching against the Santorini runway. Daniel exhaled the breath he'd been holding. After hours in transit plus a rushed layover in Athens, he was finally here. The concept still felt surreal. Last night, he'd been on a suburban street in the U.S., and now he was on a Greek island renowned for sun-splashed cliffs and postcard-perfect views. As he stepped off the plane, a wave of warm, dry air and the salty tang of the Aegean Sea welcomed him. The airport was modest compared to those in major cities, no sprawling terminals or endless gates, yet that simplicity only added to the sense of escape he craved. A handful of chatty tourists in sandals and straw hats shuffled around him, some snapping selfies or gawking at the open sky. Daniel adjusted the strap of his single suitcase and headed through the small arrivals hall. His phone, now switched to airplane mode, remained silent. There were likely dozens of missed calls and messages from home, but for once, he found peace in that silence. He paused near the exit to get his bearings. A driver, holding a placard that read, "Mr. Sullivan," caught his eye. Daniel had almost forgotten he'd booked a shuttle to the villa. Giannis, a middle-aged local with a quick smile and a weathered baseball cap, greeted him warmly. "Welcome to Santorini, Mr. Sullivan," Giannis said in a lilting accent. "First time here?" Daniel nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Yeah, hoping I can, clear my head a bit." Giannis didn't pry. He simply grabbed Daniel's suitcase, leading him outside. The sunlight was brighter than Daniel expected. It cast sharp shadows on the tarmac, as if every detail of the world here was thrown into high definition. The shuttle, a compact van that had seen better days, rumbled to life as Giannis navigated out of the lot. They zipped along narrow roads flanked by stark white walls and wind-whipped shrubs. Olive groves and vineyards punctuated the rugged terrain, while in the distance Daniel glimpsed the deep blue of the Caldera waters. It was a land shaped by volcanic power and centuries of tradition, He leaned against the window, absorbing it all. His mind drifted to the chaos he'd left behind. Helen's voice echoing, "Your presence would make things complicated." Adrian's half-formed protest, Monica's silent stares. It had all felt like a suffocating net. Here, in this foreign place, that net loosened if only for a while. "You have family in Greece?" Giannis asked casually, glancing at Daniel through the rearview mirror. Daniel cleared his throat. "No, just wanted to get away for a bit." Giannis nodded as if he understood. "Santorini can be a place for new beginnings. Just watch out, sometimes it makes people reconsider their whole lives." Daniel let out a short laugh. "Maybe that's exactly what I need." 20 minutes later, the van climbed a twisting road that wound up a cliff. White, cube-shaped buildings clung to the hillside, their rooftops capped with bright blue domes. Tourists strolled along walkways, cameras ready, while locals shuffled quickly through alleyways on errands. Giannis navigated through a labyrinth of narrow lanes until they arrived at a small courtyard. "Your villa, Mr. Sullivan," he announced, parking near a wrought iron gate. "I believe the owner left keys in a lockbox. Good luck and enjoy." Daniel thanked him, stepping out into the sunshine. The courtyard featured a trickling fountain and a few potted geraniums. With a clunk, Giannis hoisted Daniel's suitcase onto the stones and waved goodbye before driving off. The shuttle's engine faded, leaving Daniel in near silence, broken only by the fountain's soft burble. He punched in the lockbox code he'd been emailed and retrieved a single key. Turning the old-fashioned lock, he opened the door to his temporary refuge. A wave of cool air, probably from the villa's thick walls, washed over him, along with the faint scent of lemon cleaner. Setting his suitcase aside, Daniel stood in the main room, a mixture of rustic and modern. Whitewashed walls, wooden beams overhead, and a sleek kitchenette in the corner. The back wall boasted floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto a small terrace, revealing a breathtaking view of the caldera. Boats dotted the water far below, their sails like tiny white triangles against the cobalt sea. He placed a hand on the doorknob, as if to confirm that this place was real. The swirl of emotions inside him intensified: relief, apprehension, guilt. But above all, there was a sense of possibility. Away from the drama, away from feeling like an unwanted guest in his own home. Daniel walked over to the window. He stared down at the water, letting the breeze brush against his face. Maybe Giannis was right. Maybe this was a place where he could forge a new beginning, if only he dared to let go of the past. The late afternoon sun cast gold-tinted beams through the windows, making the villa's interior glow. Daniel slung his jacket over a chair, stepping onto the terrace that overlooked Santorini's famous caldera. The sea stretched before him, a tapestry of sapphire hues shifting with each ripple. A small table and 2 chairs were set against the railing, as if inviting him to sit and watch the horizon for hours. He ran his fingers along the ironwork, smooth, cool to the touch. An unexpected wave of calm washed over him. I actually did it. I left. He let out a breath, his gaze drifting to the far-off cliffside. White buildings perched at the top like pearls, connected by narrow pathways. Daniel found himself momentarily mesmerized by the interplay of shadows and sunlight across the volcanic rock. Inside, the villa was charming in its simplicity. To the left of the main living area, a compact bedroom waited: simple bed, crisp white sheets, a wooden nightstand holding a lamp that looked hand-painted with Greek motifs. In the bathroom, the shower was tiled in pale blue squares, reminiscent of the Aegean Sea itself. After freshening up, Daniel noticed his phone blinking with the last bit of battery. He'd kept it powered off to avoid the barrage of calls and texts from home. With a flicker of hesitation, he plugged it into a nearby outlet. He still had no intention of answering messages, but a strange sense of security arose in having the option, like carrying a key you might never use. His stomach rumbled. He realized he hadn't eaten properly since that quick snack during his layover. Rummaging through the kitchenette, he found nothing but a few complimentary crackers and a note from the villa owner, Sophia. "Welcome to Santorini. I hope you enjoy your stay. The fridge is empty for now, but you'll find markets and restaurants just a short walk away. Feel free to reach out if you need anything." Sophia. Daniel grabbed the crackers and nibbled on one, its salty dryness only emphasizing his hunger. He considered trekking down to a nearby taverna, Yet some lingering fatigue made the idea of going out less appealing. He stepped back onto the terrace, letting the soft breeze cool his skin. Overlooking the caldera, he spotted a handful of sailboats drifting lazily, their sails catching the wind in the golden twilight. The quiet was so profound that the only sounds were distant gulls and the gentle rustle of wind against the villa's walls. For a moment, he closed his eyes. Memories threatened to surge up Helen's curt voice, Adrian's reluctant silence. A swirl of pain stabbed at him, but then the crash of a distant wave rose in his ears, pulling him back to the present. This was his sanctuary, at least for now. Dragging a chair closer to the railing, he sat down, arms folded on the warm iron. The setting sun was about to slip below the horizon, painting the sky with orange and lavender streaks. The scene felt almost theatrical, as if nature itself was giving a performance. Just then, the doorbell chimed a soft ding from inside. Daniel startled. Who could possibly be visiting me here? He walked in and opened the front door to find a petite, dark-haired woman with a clipboard. Her name tag read, Elena Villa Management Team. Hi, she greeted, flashing a quick smile. Sophia asked me to drop by, see if everything's okay. I also have a few local menus you might like. Relief and gratitude swelled in Daniel's chest. That's a lifesaver. I was just thinking about dinner. Elena handed him a small stack of menus, each featuring Greek dishes and fresh seafood. Welcome to Santorini, Mr. Sullivan. If you need groceries or restaurant recommendations, let me know. I live nearby. They spoke briefly, Elena suggesting a traditional taverna 2 blocks down that served the best grilled octopus in town. After she left, Daniel smiled for the first time that day. Small acts of kindness reminded him not everyone in his life viewed him as a complication. He flipped through the menus. One place, Taverna Nikos, caught his eye with pictures of vine leaves, roasted lamb, and local wine. Even the words conjured a mouth-watering image. Maybe he would head out after all. Yet for a few minutes longer, he lingered on the terrace, watching the last sliver of sun vanish beyond the horizon. In the dimming light, he felt an unexpected sense of hope, like a castaway spotting a distant ship. He might be alone here, but he wasn't broken. And tonight, under Santorini's broad sky, he would dare to imagine a life where being shut out by others didn't define him. While Daniel wrestled with dinner plans and soaked in the Santorini sunset, Helen paced the living room back at the suburban house in the States, phone in hand. The graduation ceremony was only a few hours away, but her mind wouldn't rest. She'd spent the afternoon dodging nosy neighbors and responding to well-wishers who assumed she and Daniel were simply busy with celebration. Monica sat on the couch, flipping through a glossy program for the ceremony, her brow pinched with worry. I've tried calling him 12 times, she muttered. Nothing. He's gone dark. Helen's phone buzzed an incoming text. She glanced at the screen, hoping it was Daniel. Instead, it was from an old acquaintance. Congratulations on Adrian's big day. Are you and Daniel hosting a party? Helen let out a frustrated sigh. These people don't realize. She dropped onto the armchair, raking her fingers through her hair. He just vanished. Who does that? Monica placed the program down. Helen, you kind of told him not to come. Maybe this is his way of taking that seriously. Helen's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and guilt. I only said that because he complicates things. Adrian needs a smooth ceremony. High-profile guests are coming. If Daniel started questioning decisions or stirred up a scene, you think Daniel would embarrass Adrian publicly? Monica cut in. He's not the type. Helen pressed her lips together. I don't know. Our marriage has been difficult. He's been so distant. I thought it was safer for Adrian if Daniel wasn't there. Monica shook her head. Well, your safe plan might have just driven him away altogether. A tense silence settled. The clock ticked, counting down the hours. From the hallway, Adrian emerged in a wrinkled t-shirt, phone in hand. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept. Mom, any word from Dad? Helen felt a pang, noticing how worried her son looked. No, I'm trying, but he's not answering. Adrian bit his lip, scrolling through his own phone. He's not reading my texts either. There's no delivered note. Monica interjected softly. He probably switched it off. Adrian nodded, flopping onto the couch beside Monica. This is so messed up. Graduation is supposed to be a big family day. Helen's temper flared briefly, but she swallowed her frustration. Look, the ceremony is in a few hours, and you need to focus on that. You're the graduate, Adrian. We'll deal with your father after. He'll come around. Though the words sounded confident, Helen didn't quite believe them. She caught Monica's skeptical glance. Adrian sank deeper into the cushions. I can't just ignore the fact that Dad's missing. It's freaking me out. Helen rose to her feet, crossing to the window. Outside, an early summer breeze rustled the maple trees. She wished Daniel had at least left a note or a single-line text. Something. Anything. In the yard, a neighbor's teenage son shot hoops in his driveway, oblivious to the tension inside this house. Helen envied that simplicity. A quick, fleeting thought flickered. Maybe I pushed Daniel too far. But then she remembered the arguments, the bitterness, the risk of a scene at the ceremony. No, I had my reasons, she told herself. Monica's phone rang. She looked at the screen and shrugged. Unknown number. She answered, only to find it was a telemarketer. She hung up irritably. Adrian grabbed the graduation program from the coffee table, crumpling the edge. Aunt Monica, do I really have to do that group photo thing after? I'm not in the mood. Helen spun around. That photo is part of the deal, Adrian. We can't skip it. People expect a polished image. People? Or you? Adrian retorted, uncharacteristic anger flashing in his voice. A hush fell. For a moment, Helen forgot to breathe. She'd never seen him this combative. Then again, maybe he'd never had reason to be, not until the father he relied on was abruptly cut out of one of the biggest days of his life. Monica cleared her throat. Adrian, it's just one photo. Let's not blow it up. We'll figure something out after the ceremony. Maybe we can track your dad down. If he's even in the state, Adrian muttered, flipping open the program. I'm gonna go get ready. He trudged off to his room, leaving a stifling tension behind. Helen stared at the half-open door where he disappeared. She felt torn between the desire to control this day and a growing anxiety about Daniel's abrupt departure. A swirl of questions circled in her mind. Where is he? Is he safe? Did I really push him this far? Monica tapped her fingers on the armrest. We should think of a plan if he doesn't show up. People might ask. Helen turned away from the window. We'll say he had an emergency out of town. That's all. Her voice wavered slightly, betraying her uncertainty. Sure, Monica murmured. We'll do our best with that story. Outside, the sky was bright and cloudless, a cheerful contradiction to the turmoil inside the house. Helen closed her eyes, inhaling slowly. She had no idea that at this very moment, Daniel was gazing out at an ocean halfway across the world, trying to forget the life he'd left behind. Late the next morning, Daniel took a slow walk along the promenade that traced Santorini's caldera edge. His plan to explore a bit before finding lunch turned into a longer stroll, the sun warming his back as he navigated narrow lanes. Bright bougainvillea blooms spilled over white walls, and friendly stray cats lounged in shady spots. He briefly passed by Taverna Nikos, the place Elena had recommended. The sizzle of meat on the grill and the scent of olive oil and oregano were tempting. However, the sky was so clear and inviting that Daniel decided to wander a bit more, maybe find a perfect vantage point for a midday view of the water. A small cluster of cafes came into sight, each with a handful of tourists relaxing under striped umbrellas. Daniel picked one with an unobstructed overlook, a place called Blue Coast Cafe. He settled into a chair, the fresh breeze making him exhale in contentment. This was exactly what he needed. No demands, no tension, just an open horizon. As he flipped through the laminated menu, footsteps approached. "Pardon me," a feminine voice said. "Is this seat taken?" Daniel glanced up. A woman stood before him, slim, with sun-kissed skin and wavy dark hair that framed her face. She clutched a bottle of water and wore a light wrap over her swimsuit. An easy smile touched her lips. Surprised, he shook his head. "No. Go right ahead." She pulled out the chair next to his. "Thanks. This cafe is packed, and I was hoping to catch the view without baking in direct sunlight." Her accent was faintly American, though with an edge he couldn't place. Intrigued, he returned her smile. "It's a good spot for a breeze." They fell into a brief, companionable silence, the hush broken by the cafe staff bustling around. Daniel decided to break the ice. "You visiting Santorini, or do you live here?" She capped her water bottle, then offered a handshake. "I'm Camilla. I travel a lot for work writing reviews of resorts and beaches, so I guess you could call me a part-time resident." "Daniel," he replied, shaking her hand. "You're a travel writer?" Camilla nodded, eyes drifting to the sea. "Something like that. I blog, do freelance pieces for magazines, I go wherever the editorial team sends me." She laughed softly. "Not the worst job in the world, I admit." Daniel couldn't help but smile. "Definitely beats staring at spreadsheets all day." He gestured around. "So how's Santorini stacking up against your other destinations?" She took a moment to consider. "Well, it's gorgeous like a painting come to life, but it can be overwhelming in high season. Sometimes I like it best in moments like this. Mid-morning lull, sunshine but not scorching, less crowd pushing at your back." "Agreed," Daniel said, glancing around. "I only just arrived, and I'm already enamored by the view." Camilla gave him a curious look, as though reading between the lines. "What brings you here, if you don't mind me asking? You don't strike me as the typical honeymooner or backpacker." Daniel hesitated, his chest tightening at the reminder of home. "Let's just say I needed a break." Then, catching himself, he turned the focus back on her. "How about you? Any hidden gems you'd recommend for a newcomer?" She picked up the menu. "This cafe does an incredible fresh lemonade, and if you're into something stronger, they have local wines that are surprisingly good. As for sightseeing, there's a quieter black sand beach down the coast, less touristy, perfect if you want some solitude." The thought of a peaceful beach, unspoiled by crowds, tempted Daniel. "That sounds amazing." After placing their orders, Daniel opting for a Greek salad and iced coffee, Camilla for lemon juice with a cheese pie, they kept chatting. Their conversation drifted from favorite travel spots to random anecdotes about the Greek islands. There was a natural ease to her company, something Daniel found disarming. He hadn't expected to feel so at ease with a stranger. When the server brought their food, Camilla excused herself to take a quick phone call from an editor. Daniel watched her step aside, noticing the grace in her movements. He shook his head slightly, reminding himself this was just a friendly chat in a cafe, not a step toward anything more. Still, the warmth in his chest was undeniable after everything he'd faced. A slice of normal human connection felt like a gift. Camilla returned, rolling her eyes. "Work. They want me to check out a new boutique resort on the far side of the island. Looks like my free day just vanished." Daniel chuckled sympathetically. "Sounds fun in its own way." "It is," she admitted, sipping her lemonade. "Anyway, enjoy your time in Santorini, Daniel. If you ever need tips, or if you see me around, feel free to say hi." He nodded, raising his iced coffee and a mock toast. "Thanks, Camilla. Appreciate that." They ate quietly for a bit, the steady murmur of ocean and cafe bustle wrapping them in a gentle soundtrack. Daniel had no illusions he was in a fragile state, with lingering heartbreak from the States. But somehow, he felt a small spark of optimism stirring. This was day 2 in a place he'd never imagined visiting. He was already meeting friendly faces, experiencing the tang of new possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, he thought, he could start seeing himself in a different light here, a man who wasn't shackled by rejection, but rather liberated by an open horizon. A crisp morning sun glinted off the polished metal of the university's main auditorium. Helen stepped onto the sprawling lawn, flanked by Monica on one side and Adrian on the other. Despite the bright banners, the clusters of excited graduates, and the lively brass band tuning up, a hollow tension clung to them. Adrian wore his graduation gown, cap tucked under one arm. He looked every bit the accomplished senior tall, shoulders squared, yet his eyes flicked restlessly across the crowd. Helen caught that moment of hesitation. She knew what he was seeking, a glimpse of Daniel, who was nowhere to be found. "We'll head inside," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "Let's get our seats. Make sure you're in line with the other grads." Adrian nodded stiffly, swallowing. "Mom, are you sure Dad's not just running late?" Monica adjusted her handbag, trying not to meet Adrian's gaze. She cleared her throat. "We haven't heard from him, sweetie." Helen felt a pang of guilt. She pressed her lips together and guided Adrian forward. "Don't worry about that now," she murmured. "Focus on your big day." Inside the auditorium, streams of graduates shuffled down the aisles, their gowns swishing against the polished floor. Family members and friends craned necks, snapping photos from the stands. Helen and Monica found seats among other proud relatives, every face buzzing with anticipation. Yet Helen's composure was forced. Her heart pounded as she noticed other families' moms, dads, siblings huddled together, exchanging excited whispers. The empty seat beside her felt like a glaring reminder that Daniel should have been there. She inhaled slowly, determination surging within her. "We've done fine without him so far. We'll handle this too." A faculty member tapped on a microphone and the ceremony began. Speeches drifted through the echoing space deans, congratulating students on their hard work, a guest speaker waxing poetic about new chapters and the importance of family support. Helen's stomach churned at the words, family support. Adrian waited backstage with fellow graduates. Through a side curtain, he could see the crowd scanning row after row. No sign of Daniel. Trying to quell his disappointment, he fiddled with the tassel on his cap. The surging energy of the moment was overshadowed by the heaviness in his chest. When Adrian's row was called, he marched across the stage. Polite applause filled the room. Monica stood to snap a photo on her phone while Helen clapped, a tight, proud smile on her face. For a fleeting moment, father and son's absence from each other's lives burned like a raw wound. But the ceremony rolled on regardless, finalizing each graduate's transformation from student to alumnus. After the last name was announced and the hats were tossed some high, some half-hearted, the auditorium erupted in cheers. Balloons and confetti rained down, and a lively brass flourish played. Helen forced a bright expression as Adrian joined them in the front aisle. "Congratulations!" Monica said, hugging him. Helen wrapped her arms around him too, ignoring his stiff posture. "Thanks," Adrian murmured. Cameras flashed. He did his best to muster a smile. "We should probably head to the after-party. People are waiting, right?" Helen nodded, hoping her voice wouldn't waver. "Yes, let's make it quick. Everyone's excited to see you." They left the auditorium, jostling through throngs of beaming families. A proud father wearing a "one dad" pin brushed past them, congratulating Adrian out of courtesy. Adrian mumbled a polite "thank you," his eyes darting away from the pin. Helen bit the inside of her cheek, keenly aware of the irony. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the bright streamers tied to campus lampposts. Helen guided Adrian and Monica toward the parking lot, where a black sedan awaited them arranged by Monica's friend, who insisted on helping to make the day special. But beneath the outward show of success, each of them carried a knot of unease. They all knew the day was incomplete, the father's seat empty. As they pulled away, Helen glanced at Adrian, who stared out the window, silent. She wondered if he blamed her for pushing Daniel away. The question twisted in her gut. Did I do the right thing? Monica, busy sending texts about the after-party location, kept glancing at her sister. She could sense the tension building, the unspoken regrets. Neither Helen nor Adrian voiced them. The big day was supposed to be a cause for celebration, yet for all of them an undercurrent of dread loomed, leading into an after-party that none of them suspected would unravel so spectacularly. A private banquet room in a boutique hotel had been decked out in Adrian's school colors, blue and silver balloons bobbing along the ceiling, a congratulatory banner strung above a linen-draped buffet. Helen had spared no expense in making it look upscale. Waiters in crisp white shirts circulated with trays of sparkling cider and bite-sized hors d'oeuvres. Adrian stepped inside, forcing a polite nod to a half-dozen acquaintances who offered high fives and congratulations. Some of his old soccer teammates were there, along with a smattering of distant relatives, none of whom asked about Daniel's absence outright. It was the elephant in the room nobody wanted to address. Helen exchanged pleasantries with a few guests, her smile set in place. Monica hovered near the door, scanning for the arrival of Adrian's girlfriend, Kelly, a sweet, soft-spoken classmate who Adrian had been dating for months. Before long, Kelly entered, greeting Adrian with a light hug. Her floral dress complemented the decor, and she carried a small gift bag. "I'm so proud of you," she gushed, eyes shining. Adrian's tense shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thanks for coming, and for putting up with all this." He gestured vaguely at the curated festivity. Helen, spotting the exchange, drifted over to them. "Kelly, dear, help yourself to whatever you like. We've got some special fruit tarts on the dessert table." But even as Helen spoke, Adrian's gaze flicked to the entrance. He expected someone else to appear Daniel, though he knew deep down that hope was futile. "Adrian," said a voice behind him. He turned, eyebrows raised. A young woman with wavy auburn hair stood there, wearing a fitted blouse and jeans. She was definitely not on the guest list. "Hi," she added pointedly, arms folded. Adrian's face paled. "Crystal? What are you? How did you—" Crystal's lips curved into a tight smile, and she held up a phone, flipping through what looked like saved screenshots. "I came to congratulate you," she said, each word laced with sarcasm, "and to let your girlfriend know the real story." Kelly glanced over, confused. "Adrian, who is this?" All around them, chatter in the room quieted, drawn by the sudden tension. Helen frowned, stepping closer. "Is there a problem?" she asked, eyes darting between Adrian and the mysterious newcomer. "Oh, there's definitely a problem," Crystal said, brandishing her phone. "Because I have receipts, texts, photos, all of it. I'm the girl he's been seeing secretly for the past several months." Murmurs rippled through the banquet hall. Monica let out a gasping breath, and a half-dozen heads turned in unison. "You're lying!" Kelly blurted, face flushed, confusion warring with hurt in her eyes. Crystal's voice rose, her frustration boiling over. "Lying? Please, he's the liar." She pressed a couple of buttons, showing a photo that clearly featured Adrian, wearing the same jacket he'd worn at a campus party, with his arm slung around Crystal. Adrian's pulse thundered in his ears. He shot a panicked glance at Helen, who looked appalled. Kelly's grip on the gift bag slackened. "You said you loved me," Crystal accused, tears welling. "And then I found out you were still with her? Enough is enough." A hush fell, broken only by the muffled background music. Guests froze, some stepping back to avoid the brewing storm. A few took out phones, possibly capturing the moment. Adrian snapped, his face twisted with anger at himself, at the corner he'd painted himself into. "You couldn't wait until after the party?" he hissed. In an impulsive move, he swung an arm at a nearby table. Glasses and plates crashed to the floor, drawing shocked gasps from onlookers. Kelly recoiled, tears streaming, while Crystal stood her ground, phone in hand. Helen reached for Adrian's shoulder, desperate to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "I'm done," Adrian muttered through clenched teeth, eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and fury. He bolted for the door, ignoring Kelly's stricken pleas and Helen's frantic call of his name. Then the banquet room erupted into chaos, whispers, exclamations, and the frantic swirl of guests unsure whether to chase Adrian or comfort Kelly. Monica stared, speechless. The beautiful decor was overshadowed by the clatter of broken glass. Helen, face drained of color, whipped out her phone in a reflex. She wanted to call Daniel, to demand he fix this, to rail at him for not being there to keep Adrian in check. But he was thousands of miles away, unreachable. The after-party collapsed under the weight of Adrian's deception, leaving shattered illusions and shattered plates in its wake. In the aftermath, the hotel staff hustled to clear debris. Broken glass, spilled drinks, and a half-toppled centerpiece littered the floor. Guests whispered among themselves, a few slipping out quietly, eager to escape the embarrassing spectacle. Helen stood near the largest puddle of punch, her posture stiff, eyes blazing. Monica hovered beside her, pressing a tissue to her eyes. She wasn't sobbing outright, but her cheeks were damp shock and mortification mingling into silent tears. Helen brushed off a passing waiter's offer to help her sit down. "No, thank you," she said, voice trembling with barely contained anger. "I need to find Adrian." Monica crumpled the tissue in her palm. "He stormed out. We have no clue where he went." Her voice wavered. "Oh, Helen, what a disaster." Kelly, the now ex-girlfriend, had fled moments before, refusing to speak to anyone. The bold intruder, Crystal, left in a storm of curses, phone in hand, presumably satisfied with her dramatic reveal. Helen's nails dug into her palms as she scanned the room for any sign of Adrian's friends. Spotting one, a tall, lanky guy in a half-unzipped grad gown, she marched over. "Do you know where Adrian might be?" she demanded. The friend shook his head, swallowing hard. "Sorry, Miss Sullivan, haven't heard. He texted me, like, an hour ago about meeting later, but—" He trailed off, stepping backward under Helen's furious glare. Monica approached, placing a hand on Helen's shoulder. "Let's calm down. Yelling at Adrian's friend won't help." Helen jerked away, shaking with pent-up rage. "Daniel," she muttered bitterly, voice low but vehement. If only he'd been here, this wouldn't have happened. It was a knee-jerk reaction, an attempt to pin blame on the person who had so suddenly removed himself from the family equation. Monica bit her lip. "Don't you think that's unfair? Adrian's the one who cheated. You can't just throw all that at Daniel." Helen pressed her eyes shut. She knew Monica was right on some level, but the resentment poured out nonetheless. If Daniel had been in the picture, maybe Adrian wouldn't have got, I don't know. He might have listened to his father. Or we could have handled this together. Monica opened her mouth to argue, but then shook her head. "Let's just find Adrian." She glanced around at the huddle of remaining guests. One or two tried to approach, offering awkward condolences, but Helen waved them off. A manager from the hotel stepped forward, apologizing for the upset. "We're sorry about the incident, Miss Sullivan. We'll waive some of the fees for cleanup if that helps." His tone suggested he really wanted them to leave and salvage the hotel's reputation. Helen clenched her jaw. "Fine. Charge whatever you need. Just close this event." "It's done." She glanced at Monica. "We'll pay the bill, and we're leaving." Monica nodded, heading for the front desk with the manager. Meanwhile, Helen snatched her phone from her handbag. She dialed Adrian, but no answer. She tried texting him. "Come home. We need to talk. This can't be how your graduation day ends." Nothing. She typed another message. "Adrian, please. I'm worried. Where are you?" Still, silence. Helen inhaled shakily, her mind whirling with dread over where her son might be, who he might be with, and what he'd do next. Some distant part of her thought of Daniel again. She pictured him rummaging in a drawer for keys, stepping into the car, driving to find Adrian. That's how it used to be, an unspoken partnership. The flash of longing was quickly replaced by fury. He walked away. Monica returned, receipt in hand, eyes rimmed red. "We're all set. Let's go." They stepped out into the late afternoon sunlight, which felt cruelly bright given the gloom inside them. As they walked to the parking lot, Helen's phone buzzed with a message from a relative. "We left. Sorry things got so awkward. Congrats to Adrian anyway." Helen almost wanted to smash the phone. The day had devolved into a fiasco, a meltdown on what was supposed to be Adrian's triumphant milestone, and Daniel, intentionally or not, had left her to handle the fallout alone. Monica opened the car door. "We'll drive around a bit, see if we can spot Adrian. Then we'll check home." Helen nodded, sliding into the driver's seat. "Yes, let's. We have to fix this." Yet even as she said the words, a sickening sense of helplessness weighed on her. Adrian's betrayal, Daniel's absence, the public humiliation, it all crashed over her like a rogue wave. For the first time in a long while, Helen felt truly unmoored, uncertain if there was any lifeline within reach. Late that night, the house felt like a ghost ship. Helen had returned hours earlier with Monica in tow, both exhausted from a fruitless search for Adrian. He'd vanished, no calls, no messages, not even a post on social media. Kelly wasn't answering her phone either. No one knew where he was. Monica slumped on the living room couch, hugging a cushion. "I've tried calling all of Adrian's close friends," she said in a shaky voice. A few said they'd heard from him earlier in the week, but nothing tonight. Helen paced by the window, gnawing on the edge of her thumbnail, an old nervous habit. The single lamp in the room cast their shadows against the wall, looming large and distorted. "He's never done this before," she murmured. "Not like this." The tension in the house felt suffocating. The air conditioning hummed, but neither of them noticed. Helen's eyes flicked to the clock on the mantel, nearly midnight. The graduation day from hell was almost over, But the crisis was far from resolved. Her phone screen lit up. She pounced on it, only to see it was a spam call. She rejected it with an agitated swipe. Then, in a burst of frustration, she dialed a number she'd sworn she wouldn't. Daniel's. The phone rang and rang. Finally, it went to voicemail, just like every other attempt she'd made. Helen closed her eyes, her voice trembling as she left a message. "Daniel, it's me. Everything's falling apart, if you even care." Her words came out hot and unfiltered. Adrian humiliated himself at the party, then ran off. "Nobody knows where he is. I can't believe you left me to handle this alone. Call back, please." She hung up, heart pounding. A moment later, she realized how raw and desperate she sounded. But she didn't care. She needed him to know. Monica swallowed, hugging the pillow tighter. "I'm not defending Daniel," she said quietly. "But this isn't exactly his fault, Helen. Adrian's choices led to this. Daniel didn't cause that meltdown." Helen shot her sister a look mixed with pain and anger. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm not in the mood to debate this. If Daniel were here, maybe Adrian wouldn't feel so lost." She turned away, arms folded tight. Minutes stretched into an hour of tense silence, broken only by the fridge's occasional hum and the faint rustle of branches outside. Then came a beep Helen's phone, indicating a text. She scrambled for it, half expecting to see Adrian's name. But it was from an unrecognized number. She opened it. "Mom, it's Adrian. I messed up. I'm sorry. I needed space. I'm safe. Don't worry. But I can't come back tonight." A rush of relief mingled with anger. Helen typed a rapid reply. "Where are you? Let me pick you up." The response came a minute later. "No, I can't face you or Aunt Monica right now." Monica hovered at Helen's elbow, reading over her shoulder. "At least he's okay," she breathed. "He's texting. That's something." Helen's eyes brimmed with tears of frustration. "He won't let me help," she murmured. "He's shutting me out." A swirl of guilt took hold inside her. Had she been so focused on managing every detail of Adrian's life that she pushed him into deception? Or maybe it was Daniel's absence that left Adrian adrift. She shook her head, pressing fingertips to her temples, as though staving off a headache. Suddenly, Helen's phone rang again, unknown number. This time she answered immediately, expecting it to be Adrian. Instead, a mumbled voice said, "Helen? It's me, Monica's friend. You remember me from the after-party list. I might have seen Adrian near my building downtown." Helen's heart soared. "Are you sure?" The friend hesitated. "He looked upset, but yeah, I recognized him. He left with a buddy in a blue sedan." Helen thanked him, scribbling down the address. Hanging up, she looked at Monica. "He's in the downtown area with some friend. At least we know." Monica pushed off the couch. "Should we drive there now?" Helen hesitated. "He said he doesn't want us." "I don't want to chase him down and make it worse." Her voice cracked. "I just want him to be safe." A new beep drew their attention. A voice memo from Adrian. Hands shaking, Helen played it on speaker. Adrian's voice was thick, sounding on the edge of tears. "Mom, I know I ruined everything. I wish Dad were here. I don't know how to fix this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Monica covered her mouth with one hand, stifling a sob. Helen stood, phone clutched so tight her knuckles went white. Tears slipped down her cheeks as the message ended. In that raw moment, she realized the family she'd tried to protect so fiercely was unraveling, each member lost in their own guilt, rage, or regret. And the one person who might have balanced it all, Daniel, was a world away. Helen replayed the voicemail from earlier, the one she left for Daniel. It felt inadequate now, too laced with anger to convey her desperation. She considered calling again, but the late hour and her swirling emotions held her back. For tonight, all she could do was wait, hope that Adrian stayed safe, hope that Daniel might check his messages, hope that by morning some measure of stability could be salvaged. The darkness outside the window deepened, mirroring the void in Helen's heart. She and Monica didn't speak as they settled into a long, sleepless vigil, each secretly praying for a miracle that might pull the shattered pieces of their family back together. The early morning sunlight spilled across the terrace of Daniel's cliffside villa, casting long shadows on the whitewashed walls. Daniel leaned against the railing, sipping a cup of strong Greek coffee. The sea below twinkled as fishing boats glided across gentle waves. If not for the storm brewing in his mind, the scene might have felt like a postcard-perfect escape. He hadn't turned his phone on in days. The last time he'd checked it, there were countless missed calls and messages from home: Helen, Adrian, Monica. His heart still clenched at the thought of what might be unfolding over there. Yet he clung to this quiet, uneasy peace. No demands, no blame. Just the crash of distant waves. A warm breeze ruffled his hair as he reluctantly powered up the device, deciding he couldn't hide forever. Almost immediately, the phone buzzed. Voicemails and texts flooded in, but one incoming call glowed on the screen. Carter, brother. Daniel's grip tightened around the phone. He pressed accept. Daniel? Came Carter's familiar drawl. Man, I've been trying you for days. Are you still in Greece? Daniel let out a slow exhale. Yeah, Carter. I'm still here. He noticed how his voice shook slightly. What's going on? Carter hesitated on the line, the static crackling. It's about Adrian. Everything's a mess, bro. There was this huge fiasco at his graduation party. Something about him seeing two girls at once. It went public, real ugly. And now he's run off somewhere. Helen's out of her mind. Though Daniel had steeled himself, the words still stabbed his chest. The mental image of Adrian, humiliated, stung more than he wanted to admit. I heard bits and pieces, he managed, but no details. You not picking up has them all freaking out, Carter continued. Helen, Monica, they keep calling me, asking if I know where you went. I told them you needed space, but that's not exactly comforting them. Daniel closed his eyes, the morning sun feeling hotter. Carter, if I go back, I'll just be the scapegoat. Helen made it clear she didn't want me at the ceremony, and Adrian, he told me not to take it personally. But how can I not? Carter's sigh crackled over the line. Look, I'm not telling you what to do. I get it, Helen basically pushed you away. But Adrian's meltdown is more than a teenage rebellion. He's in real trouble. And the family's pointing fingers every which way, especially at you for not being there. Anger flared in Daniel's gut. He set the coffee cup on the ledge before he shattered it. So I'm the villain if I stay, and a traitor if I leave. Nobody said that, but you know how they think. In their minds, you always kept Adrian grounded. Without you, maybe he veered off course. Daniel frowned, gaze sweeping the caldera. A tourist boat sounded its horn in the distance, an odd counterpoint to his inner turmoil. Carter, I can't just hop on a plane and fix everything. I'm not sure I even want to. I'm not judging you, man. Carter's voice softened. I just wanted you to hear the truth from me, not some rumor. Adrian's messing up bad and Helen's about to crack. Call me if you change your mind. Please. The line went silent. Daniel took a trembling breath. Thanks for telling me. I'll think about it. They said their farewells, Carter hanging up first. Daniel lowered the phone, heart pounding. For a moment, he stared at the device like it was a grenade about to detonate. Then he powered it off again. The guilt twisted inside him Adrian in crisis, Helen panicking, but resentment lingered, a reminder that he'd been dismissed when they thought they could handle everything alone. Gazing at the endless blue sea, Daniel forced himself to take a measured breath. The question circled in his mind. Could he really stay away while his family imploded? Yet the memory of Helen's voice on the phone, your presence would make things complicated, still cut deep. He finished the dregs of his coffee, the bitterness matching the taste in his mouth. Maybe in this quiet place he could find clarity. Or maybe he was running from the inevitable. Either way, he wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Later that day, Santorini's sun shone at full intensity, bouncing off the white rooftops. Daniel walked along a winding coastal path outside of town, rocky cliffs on one side and the glittering Aegean on the other. He couldn't stop replaying Carter's words. The guilt thrummed louder with each step. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind. Hey, Daniel! He turned to see Camila approaching, wearing a light sundress that fluttered in the breeze. A wide-brimmed hat shielded her face from the sun, and in her hand she carried a small notebook. Fancy meeting you here, she said, smiling. I thought you might still be holed up in your villa. Daniel chuckled softly, though his voice held an edge of tension. Needed some air, and maybe some perspective. He gestured at the rocky ledge overlooking the sea. Couldn't pass up this view. Camilla nodded. I was about to walk the shore. Mind if I join? Daniel paused, then shrugged. Sure, I could use the company. They fell into step, gravel crunching underfoot. Camilla occasionally jotted notes into her little book possible phrases for her travel articles or sketches of the coastline. After a few minutes, she glanced at Daniel. You look weighed down. Something happened? He let out a slow breath, deciding whether to unburden himself or keep it bottled up. Eventually, words tumbled out. I talked to my brother this morning. Turns out my son Adrian messed up big time back home, some cheating scandal with 2 girlfriends. He ran off after humiliating himself at his own graduation. Camilla's eyes flickered with concern. That's rough. He must be feeling pretty lost. I'm sure he is, Daniel admitted, emotions simmering beneath his calm tone. But the rest of the family's basically blaming me for not being there, even though they made it clear I wasn't wanted. Camilla led him off the main path, carefully descending to a quiet stretch of black sand beach. Only a handful of people were scattered along the shore. The gentle crash of waves filled the silence as they picked a spot to stand near the waterline. Blame is an easy currency, Camilla said softly, especially when people are hurting. Daniel crouched, picked up a piece of driftwood and drew aimless lines in the sand. I love my son, but I also feel betrayed by how they all shut me out. Now that it's falling apart, they expect me to fix it. Camilla dropped to a seat on a smooth rock, crossing her legs. I might not know your family, but I've seen this pattern before. Sometimes the person who was always the glue gets taken for granted until everything cracks. That doesn't mean you're obligated to swoop in whenever they demand. Daniel's throat tightened. But it's Adrian. He's not just some coworker, he's my kid. Camilla set a hand on his shoulder. Of course. But love doesn't erase your own hurt, Daniel. If you rush back out of guilt alone, you might resent them more. Healing doesn't happen overnight. He stared at the waves rolling in, dark pebbles shimmering under the midday sun. I feel like I'm in a tug-of-war. Part of me wants to fix things. Part of me can't bear to face the blame. And a tiny part just wants to let them handle their own mess. She offered a sad smile. You're allowed that feeling, you know. You were pushed away in a pretty cruel manner. You have a right to look after your own well-being. A loaded silence hung between them. The ocean breeze tickled Daniel's hair, bringing a faint scent of salt. He closed his eyes, letting the natural rhythm calm his racing thoughts. It felt oddly safe to confide in Camilla, this near stranger who brought no judgment or agenda. I'm torn, he whispered finally. I want to do the right thing, but maybe for once, I should do the right thing for me. Camilla squeezed his shoulder gently. I can't tell you how to handle your family, but I believe sometimes stepping away is the only way to see the bigger picture. Santorini can be a good place to clear your head. He forced a rueful chuckle, raking a hand through his hair. Yeah, that's what the driver at the airport said. People come here to rethink their lives. I guess I'm living proof. They lingered a while longer, watching the tide lap at the shore. Seagulls circled overhead, their cries echoing across the rock formations. Camilla eventually rose. I have a hotel review to finish. Will you be okay here? Daniel stood, brushing sand from his shorts. I'll be fine. Thanks for listening, Camilla. She nodded. Anytime. Just remember, no matter what, it's your life too. With that, she strolled back along the black sand, leaving Daniel to the hush of the waves. He stood there, silent, heart heavier yet somehow steadier. The confession felt like release, a small step toward figuring out what he needed, not just what everyone else demanded. Back in the States, the Sullivan home lay in tense disarray, its once cozy ambiance soured by secrets and recriminations. Helen sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, the remnants of a half-eaten sandwich beside her. Papers were strewn around bills, a letter from the university, and a note with a scrawled phone number of a counselor someone recommended for Adrian. Monica paced near the fridge, arms crossed tightly. Helen, we can't just let him hide out at his friend's place forever. He needs real help. Helen lifted her gaze, eyes bloodshot. You think I don't know that? I've tried calling him. He barely replies, and I can't force him to come home. The scandal from Adrian's after-party meltdown had rippled through their community. Friends asked awkward questions, rumors spread, and Kelly's parents threatened to talk to the dean about emotional distress, or something equally dramatic. The weight of it suffocated Helen. Monica exhaled, leaning against the counter. Has there been any word from Daniel? Helen shook her head, pressing her lips together. None. Just silence, like he fell off the earth. Her phone sat on the table, silent as a stone. Her anger flared again, the old resentment at how Daniel had left. But now, a new layer of regret pressed on her chest. We could use him right now, she murmured, voice thick. Yet he's gone, living it up somewhere, or maybe just ignoring us. Monica rubbed her temples. You said you didn't want him at the ceremony. Did you really expect him to come running back after that? Helen bristled. But part of her knew Monica spoke the truth. She'd spent so long orchestrating the perfect day that she lost sight of how Daniel felt. I never thought he'd actually leave, she said quietly. He's never done something so drastic before. A sharp rap on the door made both women jump. Monica hurried to open it, revealing Mrs. Parker, an older neighbor with a concerned expression. She held a tray of cookies, the sweet aroma filling the stale kitchen air. I heard Adrian's not doing well, Mrs. Parker said gently, eyes darting around the messy kitchen. Thought I'd bring these by. Maybe help? Helen managed a wan smile, accepting the tray. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. Things have been complicated. The neighbor nodded, voice soft. If there's anything I can do. I remember when Daniel was always out mowing the lawn or washing his truck. He's okay, right? Helen's throat constricted. Yes. He's traveling. She forced a polite goodbye, then closed the door. Monica released a shaky breath. Everyone's noticing he's not around. It's like the whole facade is crumbling. Helen stared at the tray of cookies, appetite gone. I can't hold everything together on my own, she whispered. Without Daniel, without that sense of stability, there's only me, and I'm failing. Monica's gaze softened. She took a seat across from Helen, reaching for her hand. You're not failing. Adrian's choices are on him. But yeah, it's easier to see now how much Daniel did. Helen blinked back tears. She recalled the times Daniel quietly handled the bills, the house repairs, Adrian's emotional outbursts. She used to dismiss his contributions as the bare minimum. Now she felt that absence like a cavernous hole. We can't keep blaming Daniel, Monica murmured. He's not the one who cheated on girlfriends or— I know, Helen interrupted, voice thick. But I still need him. A raw confession. A truth she was only beginning to face. The two sisters sat there, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in fading gold. Another day coming to a close without resolution, without Daniel's presence. Helen squeezed Monica's hand. I have to figure out a plan for Adrian. For us. She closed her eyes, inhaling a shaky breath. Because this can't go on. A warm Santorini evening found Daniel perched on the edge of a marble bench near the old port, watching the sky shift through hues of pink and orange as dusk approached. The air smelled of grilled fish and roasted peppers from a nearby taverna. Tourists drifted through the cobblestone paths, voices mingling in a gentle cacophony. He turned his phone on again, heart pounding. Notifications poured in, missed calls, texts, voicemails. He scrolled through them with grim determination. His pulse hammered when he saw one from Adrian, just a single file labeled audio message. He tapped it open. The sound crackled before Adrian's voice emerged. Dad, I messed up big time. I don't know how to fix it. I wish you were here. I am sorry for everything. Then a ragged breath, followed by a disconnect. Daniel closed his eyes, pain coursing through him. So many nights he'd stayed up counseling Adrian about life decisions, potential missteps. And now the boy was lost, calling out for help in a voicemail from halfway across the world. Another beep, he noticed a text from Helen. Daniel, you have to come back. Adrian needs you. We need you. A sour mix of longing and resentment clenched his gut. He could practically hear Helen's exasperated tone. The same person who'd banished him from graduation now demanded his return. "Because it's convenient," a bitter voice in his head jeered. He stood up, stuffing the phone into his pocket. A wave of tourists exited a nearby souvenir shop, chattering about donkey rides. Daniel weaved through them, stepping closer to the railing where the harbor lights blinked. Gulls swooped overhead, their cries echoing against the cliffs. Camilla's words rang in his mind. Sometimes stepping away is the only way to see the bigger picture. He tapped out a short reply to Adrian, hands shaking. "I heard your message. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I can't fix your mistakes for you. Take responsibility. I'm still your dad, but I won't be your crutch." It felt cold, even harsh, but it was the truth. He hesitated, then hit send. A moment later, he typed a briefer note to Helen. "I hope you handle this. I'm not coming back yet. Daniel." He pressed send before he could change his mind. A lump formed in his throat. He imagined Helen reading those words, imagined Adrian's confusion and maybe disappointment. But part of him felt a wave of grim relief, as if he were standing his ground for the first time in years. Folding his arms, he stared out at the water. Lights from passing ferries cast shimmering trails across the surface. The thought of boarding one of those boats, returning to the airport, crossing an ocean, and stepping back into the family meltdown weighed on him like a lead anchor. No, he wasn't ready. Not after the betrayal, not after the scapegoating. He would not be the convenient bandage. He'd spent a lifetime playing that role, patching up cracks, shielding everyone else, burying his own hurts. Now, with the hush of the ocean before him, he realized something. He deserved a chance to heal, to figure out who he was outside the demands of a family that only called him close when it suited them. He wandered along the pier until he reached a small marina. Night had fallen, a tapestry of stars overhead. The breeze carried the soft clang of boat masts and the muted laughter of diners in cliffside restaurants. Eventually, he found himself at a modest taverna with a few scattered tables on a wooden deck. He took a seat, ordering a light dinner and a glass of local white wine. While waiting for the meal, Daniel gazed at the stars reflecting on the calm water. A swirl of conflicting emotions stirred within him: worry for Adrian, anger at Helen, guilt for not rushing to solve their crisis. But in the quiet hush of the Santorini evening, a new determination emerged. He would remain here, for however long it took to regain a sense of self. He wasn't oblivious to the suffering back home, he simply refused to be the sacrificial lamb again. Adrian had to own his mistakes. Helen had to face her choices. If they truly wanted him back, they'd need to accept him as more than a backup plan. When the waiter brought his plate of grilled fish and lemon-scented potatoes, Daniel forced a small smile. The tension in his chest loosened a fraction. This was the life he'd chosen now, a life on pause from his old roles, a life where he learned to stand as his own man. The late afternoon sun draped itself over the Sullivan residence, casting long shadows across the driveway. Helen stood in the living room, eyes flicking between half-packed boxes and the suitcases by the door. The house, once a cozy symbol of her family's unity, now felt suffocating, its walls echoing with arguments and regret. She gripped the handle of one suitcase, trying to steady herself. Despite the pang in her chest, she'd made the choice to leave. The tension with Adrian had grown unbearable since his scandal, and Daniel's absence only amplified the pressure. Helen realized she couldn't keep forcing a broken routine in a house that no longer felt like home. A faint rustle behind her made her turn. Monica, her sister, hovered in the entryway, eyes filled with concern. "Helen, are you sure about this? You don't have to rush out. We can figure something out if—" Helen forced a tight smile. "I appreciate it, but staying here, it's like living in a wound that won't close." She glanced around at the emptiness. Adrian's bedroom door was shut tight. He'd already moved out days earlier, camping at a friend's apartment to avoid the neighborhood gossip. Monica set a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then let me help you load the car. My place isn't fancy, but I cleared out the guest room so you can have privacy." Helen nodded, feeling a sting of shame. She never thought she'd be lugging suitcases into her sister's home at this stage of life, but the house she shared with Daniel, once so full of warmth, had turned cold. She took a final look at the mantel, where a single dusty photo of the family remained. In it, Daniel had one arm around Helen, the other around a younger Adrian, all three beaming at the camera. She hesitated, then left the picture behind. They stepped outside into a mild summer evening. The sound of a distant lawnmower hummed through the air. Neighbors peeked through curtains, aware something was amiss, but too polite or too curious to come out and ask. Helen caught the eye of Mrs. Parker next door. The older woman gave a sympathetic wave. Helen offered a shaky nod in return. She and Monica stowed the suitcases and a few taped boxes in the trunk of Monica's SUV. Once everything was packed, Helen lingered on the porch. A swirl of memories washed over her: Daniel mowing the lawn on Sunday afternoons, Adrian's laughter echoing down the hallway. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Monica rubbed her back. "Come on, sis. Let's go. We can swing by a coffee shop if you need a pick-me-up." Helen managed a quiet, "Okay," and locked the door behind her. The key felt strangely heavy as she slid it into her purse. She forced herself not to look back as she climbed into the passenger seat. The SUV rumbled down the suburban street, leaving the Sullivan home behind. Helen's heart felt a wrench of sadness, but she also sensed a grim relief, as if a chapter, no matter how painful, was finally closing. They drove in silence for a while. Monica flicked on the radio, but neither woman really listened to the music. Helen's mind raced with the fallout of recent days, the whispers around town about Adrian, the heartbreak she'd tried to mask, and the ongoing emptiness of Daniel's silence. She remembered the texts she'd sent him, begging him to return, and the painful lack of reply. "Are you worried about the house?" Monica asked gently, breaking the quiet. Helen pressed her lips together, staring out at the passing yards. "Yes, and no. I mean, it's Daniel's name on the deed too, but he's somewhere else. I'm not sure what we'll do in the long run." Monica sighed. "For now, let's just get you settled. Then we'll figure out the next steps." Helen nodded, leaning her head against the window. The house behind them, once a symbol of partnership, had become a reminder of fractured trust. With Adrian also gone, each of them was scattered in search of solace. She closed her eyes, letting the hum of the road fill her senses. It wasn't the future she wanted, but perhaps it was the only way forward. A cramped apartment in the city's older district had become Adrian's makeshift hideout. The living room doubled as a bedroom for one of his college buddies, pizza boxes and discarded clothing scattered around. Adrian slumped on a couch with torn cushions, scrolling aimlessly through his phone. His reflection in the dark screen revealed tired eyes, the memory of the graduation fiasco weighing on him. He'd tanked his reputation overnight, friends whispering behind his back, family outraged by his public meltdown. And then he'd run. Now he was stuck here, drifting between shame and numbness. Across from him, Trevor, the friend who owned the place, took a swig of soda. "Dude, you good?" he asked, eyeing Adrian warily. "You barely talk. You eat like 2 bites of whatever I order. This arrangement might not last forever, you know." Adrian forced a half smile. "Yeah, I know. Thanks for letting me crash. I can't face my mom right now." "Or your dad," Trevor pressed, leaning forward. "He's still AWOL?" Adrian's stomach churned. "He's in Greece or something. And even if he were here, not sure I could talk to him." The thought of Daniel, once a dependable anchor, made Adrian's throat tighten. Part of him wished Daniel would bust down this door, drag him home, and spout fatherly wisdom. Another part recalled how he'd dismissed Daniel's importance on graduation day, and guilt gnawed at him. Trevor stood, pacing near the small kitchen counter. "Dude, living in denial won't fix your problems. You messed up with those girls, sure, but it's not the end of the world. You gotta talk to your parents eventually." "I know," Adrian muttered. "But I'm broke. Kelly blocked me. Crystal's threatening to put up all the screenshots online, and my mom's so mad I can practically feel it through the phone." Trevor shrugged. "And your dad?" Adrian lowered his gaze. "Don't even know if he'd pick up. I did send him a message once, told him I was sorry." His voice cracked. "He never responded. Guess I don't deserve it." Just then Adrian's phone buzzed. He startled, half hoping it was Daniel, but the notification was a bank alert. The balance in his checking account had dropped to single digits. With no part-time job lined up and no desire to show his face in public, he was stuck. Anxiety clawed at his chest. He tossed the phone aside, pulling a blanket over his lap even though the apartment was stuffy. What am I doing? He thought. He was a fresh graduate, supposed to be stepping into adulthood, yet he felt like a runaway teen with no direction. A ring from the living room's small TV drew their attention. Trevor flicked it on, flipping through channels. Adrian tried to tune out the chatter, but a passing local news segment jabbered about college graduations, igniting a fresh wave of shame. He buried his face in his hands. After a moment, he grabbed his phone again, scrolling to find Daniel's contact. The words Dad stared back at him. His thumb hovered over the call button, but dread coiled in his gut. He might ignore me, or worse, tell me I've ruined everything. In a surge of desperation, he typed out a text instead. Dad, I really messed up. I miss you, and I need your help, or maybe just your voice. I'm sorry for everything I said. Please. He pressed send, heart hammering. Trevor saw the anxious look on Adrian's face and gave a sympathetic nod. At least you tried, he said quietly. Let the man know you're still his son. Time seemed to crawl. The next minutes turned to hours, but no reply came. Adrian's chest felt hollow, each passing second another reminder of how far he'd fallen from the family he once took for granted. That night, he tossed and turned on the lumpy couch, half expecting some miracle to save him from the pit of regret. He pictured Daniel's calm presence, the father who used to wait up whenever Adrian got home late. He clutched the phone tight, hoping for even a single line of text. Dad, I'm sorry. I wish I'd told you that sooner. Sleep finally overtook him near dawn, but the uneasy dreams that followed offered no comfort, just a looping chorus of mistakes. He'd run away from the mess he caused, and now, with no father to bail him out, he might have to face the consequences alone. 2 days later, a hot midday sun drenched the cobblestone streets of Santorini. Daniel found himself wandering the bustling promenade of Fira, weaving through throngs of tourists, snapping photos of the caldera's magnificent view. He'd booked a boat tour for that afternoon, hoping the ocean air might clear his head. His phone, snug in his pocket, vibrated for the third time in an hour, an unknown number from the States. Normally he would have ignored it, but a tug of intuition made him pick up. Hello? He said, stepping aside to let a group of visitors pass. Static crackled, then a tentative voice emerged. Mr. Sullivan, this is Heather, a friend of Adrian's. She hesitated. I got your number from his phone. Look, Adrian's in a bad way, okay? He's been crashing at Trevor's, but Trevor's kicking him out soon. He hasn't told his mom. I don't know what to do. Daniel's mouth went dry. How did? Why are you calling me, not Helen? A cough on the other end. He's kind of estranged from her right now. I told him I'd reach out. He's too afraid to call you himself. Daniel glanced at the brilliant azure sea ahead, mind spinning. Afraid? Great. Why should he be afraid? Heather's voice quivered. He thinks you'll hate him or something, or that you won't care enough to come back. A lump formed in Daniel's throat. Despite his own anger, it pained him to imagine Adrian too terrified even to pick up the phone. Where is he now? She gave an address describing a rundown building in the outskirts of the city. It's not safe. He's not safe. The landlord is hassling them for overdue rent. And Adrian's mental state. He's spiraling. Daniel pressed a palm against his forehead. The midday heat felt suffocating. He wanted to shake off the guilt, but hearing about Adrian's predicament made that impossible. Has he tried calling me again? He texts you daily. I've seen the messages. He thinks you aren't reading them. Heather exhaled, the crackle of the phone line accentuating her worry. Please, Mr. Sullivan, if you can't come, maybe just talk to him. He's at a breaking point. Daniel closed his eyes, swamped by conflicting emotions. I thank you for letting me know, Heather. I'll see what I can do. He ended the call, leaning against a whitewashed wall. Tourists bustled by, oblivious to his turmoil. The searing sunlight sparkled on the sea below, mocking his internal darkness. He pulled out the phone again, noticing a cluster of unread messages from an unknown number. Quickly, he tapped through them. Adrian's desperate words pricked his heart. Dad, I'm scared. I'm broke. I can't go home. Mom's so mad. Please, can we talk? I know I hurt you, but I need you. Daniel felt tears burning at the corners of his eyes. In a flash, he saw the bright-eyed toddler who once clung to his leg, the teen who confided about heartbreaks and aspirations. That same boy had pushed him away at graduation, but now he was sinking fast. Guilt coiled in his stomach. A sense of raw panic flared. If I keep ignoring him, what if something truly awful happens? With shaking hands, he dialed the unknown number. 2 rings, then a muffled hello. The background noise was loud voices, maybe traffic. Adrian, Daniel said, voice unsteady. It's Dad. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, then Adrian's muffled sob. Dad, you answered. Oh, God, Daniel's chest constricted. Hey, it's okay. I'm listening. Adrian's words tumbled out in a rush. Apologies, confessions, the weight of shame crushing him. He admitted he'd tried to cheat the system, juggling 2 relationships to feed his ego, and now he had nothing. I understand if you hate me, Adrian whispered, but I can't do this alone. Daniel steadied himself, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. Listen, son, I won't clean up your mess, but I'm not going to abandon you. You hear me? He felt a surge of emotion, tears threatening. You made mistakes, but you're still my kid. Adrian broke down on the line raw sobs that carried heartbreak and relief. Daniel clenched the phone, tears sliding down his cheek, indifferent to the stares of a few onlookers. We'll figure something out, he said softly. I'm not sure how yet, but we will. Somewhere in that conversation, Daniel felt the old paternal instinct flare up, a combination of love, disappointment, and fierce protectiveness. He wanted Adrian to grow from this, to learn responsibility, but hearing his son's despair made it impossible to remain stonewalled forever. Thank you, Dad, Adrian finally managed, voice quivering. I promise I'll do better. I just need to know you still care. Daniel swallowed hard, memories of the first time he'd cradled baby Adrian in his arms washing over him. Of course I care, but this is on you to own up and move forward. Understand? A shaky exhale from Adrian. Yes, sir, I'll do whatever it takes. They ended the call on that note, a mixture of hope and heartbreak lingering. Daniel leaned against the wall, letting the phone slip into his pocket. The bustling crowd and shimmering sea felt surreal. For the first time in weeks, tears came freely, cathartic sobs that echoed relief, fear, and love all at once. Sunset draped Santorini in hues of lavender and tangerine, the caldera waters reflecting the sky's dying light. Daniel stood on the villa's terrace, a plane ticket on the small table beside him. He stared at it, a one-way flight back to the States, departing tomorrow. The day's events had spun his world around once more. That call with Adrian had opened a door he'd fought to keep closed. And now, all the complexities of fatherhood and marriage weighed on him anew. Yet his conversation with Adrian also lit a spark of renewed purpose. He turned as Camilla emerged from inside the villa, arms folded lightly. She'd dropped by to say goodbye after reading a text from Daniel. So you're really leaving, she observed, her voice soft. Daniel nodded, exhaling. Yeah. After all that talk about not being a rescuer, I realized. Maybe it's not about rescuing. It's about being honest with my family and with myself. Camilla tilted her head, a small smile on her lips. Sounds like you found some clarity. Are you going back because Adrian needs you, or because you're ready to face whatever's next? A gentle breeze lifted the edge of Daniel's shirt. He glanced at the fiery sky, the sun dipping below the horizon. Both, he admitted. Helen, Adrian. They have to deal with their own choices. But I can't pretend I'm completely separate from them. I can't move forward until I see this through. Camilla nodded, stepping closer. Then I think you're making the right call. Facing problems doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It just means you're stepping back into your life. He offered a wry grin. You sound like you should be a counselor, not a travel writer. She laughed softly. I'm just someone who's been around enough to know running isn't always freedom. She leaned on the railing, gazing at the distant lights flickering along the cliffside. And hey, It's not like you can't come back to Santorini someday if you need it. Daniel's chest felt tight. This island had become a haven and improbable sanctuary that showed him he could survive on his own, even find some measure of peace. Now, he was saying goodbye with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. I owe this place, and you, more than I can say, he told Camilla quietly. She touched his arm. You don't owe me a thing. Just promise you won't forget to take care of yourself once you're back in the chaos, okay? They let the silence linger, the last rays of sunlight painting the sky in a stunning collage of purples and deep oranges. Sophia, the villa owner, had left a small note in the kitchen wishing Daniel well, as if sensing he was heading out. He'd already packed his suitcase. This time, though, the sense of departure held no anger or desperation, only resolve. Finally, Camilla straightened, brushing back her dark hair. I'll leave you to soak in the final Santorini sunset, she said, eyes warm. Safe travels, Daniel. He nodded, giving her a brief, heartfelt hug. Thank you for everything. She departed quietly, her footsteps fading down the stone path. Daniel turned back to the caldera, letting the crisp night air fill his lungs. Tomorrow, he would board that plane, step off into a swirl of uncertain territory, Helen's anger, Adrian's guilt, and his own battered heart. But he felt different now, steadier. He wasn't the man who left in fury. He was someone ready to see if rebuilding was possible. He closed his eyes, absorbing the symphony of cicadas and distant dinner chatter, the occasional boat horn echoing from below. Then he whispered into the evening air, It's time to face what's waiting. In the sky overhead, stars began to flicker against the soft veil of twilight. Daniel took one last look at the plane ticket, picking it up with a steady hand. A final hush passed through him, a quiet acceptance. The taxi's headlights sliced through the dark suburban street, revealing familiar lawns and driveways. Daniel leaned forward in the back seat, heart pounding at the sight of his own house, a pale silhouette beneath a single porch light. It was close to midnight, and a light drizzle dusted the windshield. Here's good, Daniel murmured, fumbling for cash. His mind buzzed with conflicting emotions. The last time he stood in this driveway, he was leaving for Santorini under the cloak of dawn, angry, hurt, determined to escape. Now he was returning with a suitcase in hand, uncertain what he'd find inside. The driver handed back change, gave a polite nod, then eased the taxi away. Daniel lingered on the sidewalk, the rain lightly dotting his jacket. He took in the quiet of the neighborhood, no barking dogs, no voices. Almost as if the entire block was asleep, oblivious to his upheaval. He stepped onto the porch. The door was locked, but his old key still fit. A subtle click, and the door swung inward. The hallway lights were off, leaving only a dim glow from the lamp near the living room window. He set his suitcase by the entrance and peered around, noticing the hush was deeper than ever. Helen, he called softly, more out of habit than expectation. No answer. He flipped a switch, flooding the hallway with a soft glow. His gaze swept the living room bare spots on the walls, missing pictures, empty shelves. Where frames and knickknacks once perched, only dust outlines remained. A pang hit his chest. He remembered how meticulously Helen arranged family photos, how Adrian's trophies once gleamed on a shelf. Now everything felt robbed of personality, stripped to a skeleton of what once was. Slowly, Daniel ventured further. In the kitchen, cabinet doors were half open, revealing minimal contents. A couple of soup cans, some cleaning supplies, and an old coffee mug. It struck him that the house was effectively deserted. Helen must have taken her essentials when she left. He recalled Carter mentioning that Helen had moved in with Monica. He drummed his fingers on the counter, exhaling a shaky breath. A swirl of relief and sorrow churned within him. I wanted space, but this is too empty. He flipped on another light, heading down the hallway. Adrian's bedroom door hung ajar, the bed stripped bare. No posters, no clothes, not even a stray sock on the floor. It reminded Daniel of a hotel room after checkout, no sign of the occupant's life. In the doorway he stood still, heart heavy. He's truly gone. The last time they'd spoken, Adrian's voice trembled with desperation, half apology, half plea. Daniel swallowed hard, wishing he could will his son back safely under this roof. But he knew Adrian needed to face real consequences and choose to return on his own terms. A quiet hush pressed on him. He retreated to the master bedroom, the echoes of his footsteps trailing behind. Flicking the switch, he found the room tidied but stark. The closet door stood open, revealing only Daniel's old shirts. Helen's clothes, the extra blankets, her personal items gone. Even her favorite reading lamp was missing. A single lamp on Daniel's side of the bed gave a faint glow. He let out a breath, lowering himself onto the bare mattress. Noi naigiotuk sulakuamin, a thought flitted through his mind. The emptiness felt both liberating and crushing. The faint drip of rain outside mirrored the soft ache in his heart. For a moment, he sank his face into his palms. This wasn't how he imagined a homecoming. But then again, everything about his life had changed. The only way to move forward was to accept what he found here, a near-empty house, a fresh starting point. He peeled off his jacket and shoes, deciding to rest. Tomorrow he'd see about groceries or check in with Carter, or maybe contact the office one step at a time. Exhaustion crept up on him. He found a spare blanket in a hallway closet, spread it across the bed, and lay down in the hush. As the clock ticked past midnight, the house settled in quiet creaks and sighs. He listened, half expecting to hear Helen's footsteps or Adrian's music from the next room, but only silence greeted him, thick and unbroken. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the stillness envelop him. In some strange way, it was comforting and honest reflection of the new reality. Perhaps he'd left as one man and returned as another, and if this emptiness was the cost of choosing himself, he'd have to embrace it before building anything new. Morning light filtered through the blinds, illuminating scattered dust motes in the air. Daniel stirred awake on the half-bare mattress, blinking at the sparse bedroom. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. For a moment, he forgot where he was, his mind still half in Santorini. Then the plain walls and empty closet jolted him back to reality. Pushing off the covers, he stepped into the hallway. A faint mustiness clung to the air, as if the house hadn't been aired out in weeks. He opened a few windows, letting a crisp breeze waft inside. Outside, a neighbor mowed the lawn, the buzz of the engine distant yet familiar. First things first, he needed coffee, but the kitchen cupboards were nearly empty. He found an ancient jar of instant coffee and an old kettle. Soon the kettle hissed to life on the stove. As Daniel waited, he stared out the window at his weed-riddled backyard. The grass had grown a bit wild along the edges, the fence in need of a fresh coat of paint. Might as well get started, he thought. Once the coffee was ready, bitter and stale but serviceable, he quickly jotted a mental to-do list. Buy groceries, pick up cleaning supplies, maybe check the water heater downstairs if it had gone wonky in his absence. He sipped the coffee, grimacing at the taste, then rummaged in the closet for old clothes. A rumpled shirt and faded jeans would do for a day of cleaning. He spent the next couple of hours attacking dust bunnies under furniture, wiping down counters, and tossing out anything expired in the pantry. A wave of nostalgia hit him when he found an old note Helen had scribbled pick up Adrian from practice, 4 p.m. tucked behind a magnet on the fridge. He set it aside carefully, not sure why he couldn't just throw it away. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. The screen flashed with a name, Lucy, work. Daniel hesitated before answering. Hello? Daniel! Oh my gosh, is that really you? Lucy's upbeat voice was like a breath of fresh air. I tried calling a couple times last month, but no answer. Are you back in town? Daniel tucked the phone under one ear, mopping the tile floor with the other hand. Yeah, I just got in last night. Sorry for ghosting everyone. I was dealing with personal stuff. Lucy's tone softened. Totally understand. The office has been asking about you. There's an open spot if you're ready. I heard you took a leave, but they're thrilled to have you back. A small smile tugged at Daniel's lips. That sounds promising. I might take you up on that. Let me get my bearings, then maybe we can talk about rejoining next week. That'd be perfect. The boss has been whining about needing a reliable hand. I'll let them know you're around. Lucy paused. You okay, though? Everything all right? Daniel glanced around the half-empty living room, the dust rag in his other hand. I'm on the mend. But yeah, I think so. Thanks, Lucy. They exchanged a few more pleasantries before hanging up. A gentle warmth spread in Daniel's chest. Returning to work might bring a sense of normalcy, though he still had a mountain of issues to address at home. After finishing the bulk of cleaning, he decided to tackle one more task, sorting out old memories. He pulled a cardboard box from the hallway closet labeled Family Photos. Opening it, he found snapshots from Adrian's childhood, holiday cards, random candid pictures. Each stirred a pang of sorrow, but also gratitude. He set aside a small stack to possibly frame later. He wasn't ready to erase every sign of the past. By afternoon, the house felt more breathable, though still eerily quiet. The fridge was empty except for a lone water bottle and that outdated jar of jam. Daniel jotted a quick grocery list. Eggs, bread, vegetables, maybe some fruit. He wanted a fresh start in more ways than one. He paused, noticing his reflection in the stainless steel fridge door. His hair was disheveled, sweat clinging to his brow, but there was a determined glint in his eyes. He felt a measure of accomplishment, reclaiming this space. "I can do this," he told himself. "It might never be the same, but it can still be mine." Later, as golden sunlight streamed through the windows, Daniel flopped onto the couch, one of the few pieces of furniture Helen hadn't taken. Dust motes danced in the rays, a peaceful hush settling. Tomorrow, he'd restock the kitchen, maybe phone Carter to let him know he was back. For now, he simply breathed in the newly cleaned air, body exhausted but heart a little lighter. A crisp autumn breeze swept through the front yard a few mornings later. Daniel had just finished reorganizing the spare bedroom when he heard a knock at the door. Heart quickening, he placed the last box on a shelf and headed for the living room. Standing on the porch were Helen and Monica. Helen looked tired, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Monica offered an uneasy smile, arms crossed protectively. For a second, nobody spoke. Daniel swallowed, stepping aside. "Want to come in?" They entered, glancing around at the sparse decor. Helen's eyes clouded with emotion at seeing how different the house felt. She cleared her throat. I'm glad you're back." Daniel nodded, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "Figured it was time." He led them to the living room, where they settled on the couch. He took an armchair, crossing one leg over the other. Monica spoke first, rummaging in her handbag for some paperwork. "We, wanted to discuss finances and logistics. The mortgage, the bills, since, well, Helen isn't staying here anymore." Daniel exhaled, bracing for the sting of hearing it out loud. "She really isn't staying." "Sure, we can figure it out," he replied calmly. Helen nervously smoothed her jeans. "I know it's awkward, but the bank statements are in both our names. I've been paying from my account while you were gone. Obviously, that can't keep going if I'm not living here." Daniel glanced at the folder Monica handed him. Utility bills, mortgage statements stacked neatly. "I'll take over," he said slowly, flipping through them. "This house is more my responsibility now, I guess." He noticed Helen's gaze drifting to the bare walls. Her lips parted, a flicker of regret crossing her face. "It used to look so different," she murmured, maybe thinking of the times they decorated as a family. Daniel simply nodded, letting the silence speak for them. Monica shifted, clearing her throat. "We also want to talk about some items Helen left behind, like the dining table that was a wedding gift. Are you okay if she takes it? It's in storage." Daniel shrugged, tapping the folder. "If it's important to you, go ahead. I'm not attached to it." Helen pursed her lips, glancing at Daniel with something akin to sorrow. "Thank you." A thick pause settled. Daniel closed the file, setting it aside. "So, financially, I'll handle the house from now on. Is that everything, or—" Helen met his eyes, her voice low. "About Adrian. He's been around sometimes, but he hasn't told me much about what he's planning. Do you know if he spoke to you about coming back?" Daniel's chest tightened. Adrian had texted him sporadically, apologizing, updating him on small attempts to straighten out his life. "He mentioned wanting to meet me face-to-face soon," Daniel said, "but he hasn't set a time." Helen bit her lip. "I want to fix things with him, but he barely answers my calls. He thinks I blame him for everything." Daniel resisted a flicker of annoyance. "You did blame me too," he thought, but kept it to himself. Instead, he replied carefully, "He's ashamed, Helen. Give him space. Show him you're there when he's ready." Her shoulders slumped. Monica reached out, giving her sister's hand a squeeze. "He's been staying with friends. apparently applying for some part-time jobs to pay them back. At least he's trying. Silence hung again, weighted by unspoken history. Finally, Helen squared her shoulders. Look, Daniel, I'm sorry. Her eyes shone with tears. She tried to blink away. I pushed you away, made you feel unwelcome at your own son's graduation. And then everything exploded. I never intended for you to vanish, but I understand why you did. Daniel inhaled, letting the moment sink in. Memories of that humiliating phone call flickered. It hurt, he admitted, voice subdued. But maybe we all needed a shake-up. Helen nodded, tears threatening. I regret so much. I never realized how much you did for this family. A swirl of complicated emotions churned within him, gratitude for her honesty, leftover anger, a flicker of pity. We can't undo the past, he said softly. But we can decide what to do going forward. Monica glanced at them both. You guys don't have to figure it all out today, but it's good to talk. Helen exhaled shakily, turning her gaze to Daniel. So, do you want to meet about the house sale or keep it? We can finalize things in a few weeks. I don't know if you want to stay here alone. Daniel shifted in his seat. I might keep it for now. I need a place of my own, something stable. He paused, meeting her eyes. You do what you need. If you want your name off the mortgage, we'll handle it legally. She sniffed, nodding. I understand. They wrapped up the formalities, signing a few papers Monica produced. By the time they finished, the atmosphere felt a shade lighter, as if acknowledging the rift was a step toward healing. Before leaving, Helen glanced around the living room once more. I hope someday we can talk again. More personally, she said quietly. Daniel didn't promise, but he gave a slight incline of his head. Baby steps. Monica offered a brief hug, surprising Daniel with its warmth. I'm glad you're okay, she whispered. We all needed you back in some way. Then the sisters left, the door closing gently behind them. Daniel sank onto the couch, the folder of bills resting on his lap. His emotions swirled relief at having set boundaries, sadness at the finality of it all, and a cautious sense of possibility. We're not the same family anymore, he thought. But maybe that's all right. Early dawn light tinted the horizon with pale gold as Daniel stepped outside. He had texted Adrian the night before, asking if they could meet at the small park near the river. No pressure, just a walk to talk things over. The air held a slight chill, autumn's cool breath settling over the city. Daniel zipped his light jacket and headed down the quiet street. A few blocks later, he arrived at the park entrance, an arch of trees, shedding leaves in warm shades of red and orange. He spotted Adrian on a bench by the water. Dressed in a worn hoodie and jeans, the boy looked tired, his shoulders slumped. But when Daniel approached, Adrian stood, attempting a small smile. Hey, Dad. Daniel's pulse thudded with both relief and lingering tension. He took a few steps forward, nodding. Morning, son. They fell into an awkward hug, Adrian's face buried briefly against Daniel's shoulder. For Daniel, it felt like the realest moment they'd shared in months. Do you want to walk? Daniel asked, jerking his chin toward the winding path along the river. Adrian nodded, sliding his hands into his hoodie pockets. They set off at a slow pace, the water reflecting the soft pinks of sunrise. For a moment, neither spoke, letting the hush of the current and the rustle of leaves cradle them. Finally, Adrian cleared his throat. I got a part-time job at a local warehouse. It's just unloading shipments, but it pays some bills. I'm trying to stand on my own feet. Daniel's chest swelled with a mix of pride and regret. Good. That's a start. I won't pretend everything's fixed, but it's good to see you taking responsibility. Adrian's gaze flicked over the water's surface. I messed up so badly, Dad. Every night I replay the party, the cheating. I can't believe I became that person. Daniel sighed. We all make mistakes, Adrian. What matters is owning them and not repeating them. They reached a small wooden footbridge crossing a narrow stretch of the river. The boards creaked underfoot. Adrian paused at the center, leaning on the railing, eyes distant. I still want to finish my degree at some point. Maybe I can reapply next year, once I settle the drama. Daniel studied his son's profile. That's up to you, but I'll support the decision. Just be sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Adrian's voice trembled slightly. I was so stupid, pushing you away. Telling you not to come to graduation, I guess. I thought you were controlling or something. But now I see I was the one who took you for granted. A pang lanced Daniel's heart. You're not the only one at fault. I let resentment build up. I should have confronted the issues earlier. Adrian nodded slowly, shoulders sagging. Mom and I barely talk these days. She's trying, but I can't shake the feeling that she blames me for everything. Daniel rested a hand on Adrian's shoulder. Your mother loves you in her own way. She's also coping with regrets. Don't shut her out forever, but give yourself time. They resumed walking, the path curving under tall oaks. Sunlight began filtering through the branches, illuminating specks of dust in the air like tiny stars. Adrian inhaled the crisp morning breeze as if tasting hope. Where do we stand, you and me? Daniel considered. I'm your dad, that won't change. But I'm not going back to handling everything. I've told you I'm here for advice, for guidance, but you fix your own messes. Adrian gave a slight chuckle, a tear glinting at the corner of his eye. That's fair. I plan to get my own place once I save enough. Maybe then I can visit you at the house properly. At the mention of the house, Daniel's thoughts flicked to Helen's departure and the conversation with her about finances. This place is mine now, he reminded himself. I'd like that, he said, offering a small smile. We can see if you want any of your old stuff from your room, what's left anyway. Adrian nodded, raking a hand through his hair. Thanks, Dad. They continued in companionable silence, footsteps crunching over fallen leaves. Eventually, they reached the riverbank's end, where the path looped back toward the main street. The sunlight now fully brushed the tops of the trees, chasing away the morning chill. Adrian turned, exhaling a shaky breath. I'm sorry for, well, everything, but especially for shutting you out. Daniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, gripping firmly. Apology accepted. Let's just keep moving forward. One step at a time, okay? Adrian offered a watery grin. Deal. They paused, looking out at the shimmering river one last time. The city around them stirred awake, a jogger padded by. A car's horn sounded faintly in the distance. Father and son stood in that golden haze, understanding that while the past had fractured them, a new dawn held the promise of rebuilding. Feel like breakfast? Daniel asked, voice lighter. We can grab something. Talk more if you want. Adrian nodded eagerly. I'm starving, actually. They headed back toward the park entrance, picking up an easy conversation about eggs versus pancakes, the tension between them easing with each passing minute. The day stretched out before them like a clean slate, imperfect but full of possibility. As they exited, Daniel glanced up at the sky. The sun was high enough to bathe the streets in light. He inhaled, letting a quiet smile tug at his lips. I used to feel pushed aside. Now I'm stepping forward by my own choice, and I'm not alone.